Today I'm here to share my collection of one of my favorite publishing imprints, Dean Street Press's Furrowed Middlebrow books. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life and welcome to a new little series that I'm going to be doing where I highlight a publisher or a collection of books that I have in my possession that I have read or need to read, or a little bit of both, which is what we are going to find in today's video. For my very first video in this series, I am focusing on Dean Street Press's Furrowed Middlebrow imprint. Dean Street Press began their Furrowed Middlebrow imprint in late 2016, and this imprint is specifically dedicated to women writers of the early and mid 20th century. And this imprint was done in collaboration with Scott from the Furrowed Middlebrow blog. And I will have a link to Scott's blog down in the description box below. It is a wonderful resource if you are looking for Furrowed Middlebrow titles, both from Dean Street Press and other publishers as well. Scott is a wonderful resource, so definitely go and check that out, and you can find all kinds of lists with hundreds and hundreds of books that fall into that Furrowed Middlebrow category. I first discovered Dean Street Press and the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint a few years ago through some book friends on Instagram, and I was immediately drawn to these books, and I started purchasing them and reading them and absolutely fell in love with these books, with these authors, with their stories, with the wonderful take on domestic life that they represent, and they speak to me. And of course, not everyone is going to be a favorite, but it is my goal to read all of the books in the Dean Street Press Furrowed Middlebrow imprint. I think there are around 100 right now. I believe that's about where they are. I'm not 100% sure, so I definitely have a ways to go. This stack right behind me are all of the read Dean Street Press books that I have in my collection. So I definitely have some reading ahead of me, and I have quite a few unread books as well. So grab yourself a warm cuppa and let's get into the books. If I have counted correctly, I believe I have 27 of the Dean Street Press Furrowed Middlebrow books in my collection as of this moment. 11 of them I have read. They're in this stack right here. And then I am currently in the middle of one, and the remainders are on my TBR shelf. I think what I'm going to do is go through the books I have read first, and then I will share with you the book I'm currently reading, and then I will show you all the books I have yet to read. Now, I'm just going to share these with you in alphabetical order by author. So, for no reason other than just to keep things straight in my own mind, we're actually going to start with one of the nonfiction picks in the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint, and that is Spam Tomorrow by Verilee Anderson. And this is Verilee's memoir about her time in London during World War II. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Verilee has a wonderful writing style. It's very, very funny. And while there are certainly some poignant and some heartbreaking moments in this, she just has a wonderful way of writing and sharing her experiences. I'm just going to read you a quick quote off the back, which says, "When I asked the local chemist for lint and disinfectant, he felt it was only fair to allow the first aid post to claim me. Half a dozen VADs made a rush at me and treated my small abrasion as though my whole head had been blown off." Her writing style is just a little bit tongue-in-cheek in that way, and I found this absorbing and delightful, and I absolutely loved it. Next up, I have two books by Molly Clavering. The first is Near Neighbors, and the second is Dear Hugo. And you've heard me talk about both of these books. I absolutely love them. I'm actually about to reread Near Neighbors. We are reading it for my Book Jenny's Patreon group this month. This is our read-along choice, and Dear Hugo is also excellent. It is an epistolary novel, and it is fun with a unexpected ending, but one that I actually really loved. But both of these are delightful. Near Neighbors, we follow a spinster, and then in Dear Hugo, we follow a young woman who is writing to the brother of her, I think it was her fiance, yeah, or her lost love who was killed during the war. Anyway, and they're corresponding after World War II. So both of these are wonderful. Just light, charming. Molly Clavering was friends with D.E. Stevenson. You can definitely tell by their very similar writing styles, and I highly recommend both of these. Next up is one of my most recent reads from the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint, and that is The Woods in Winter by Stella Gibbons. We read this for the Cozy Reader Book Club in January, and while this isn't a favorite of mine, I am glad that I read it. I didn't wholly connect with our main character, whose name was Ivy, and Ivy's a little cantankerous. She's a little bit off-putting, and I had trouble reconciling that. Stella Gibbons is such a quirky author, and this is so different from Cold Comfort Farm by her, which I really adore. But if you don't mind a main character who is not the most lovable character, then maybe give this a try. But I'm very curious to read more by Stella Gibbons, and I have at least one other by her in my TBR pile here. So not my favorite of the Furrowed Middlebrows, but I'm still glad that I read it. Next up is Four Gardens by Marjorie Sharp. And in this, we follow one woman's life. Carolyn Smith is our main character through the 4 different gardens that have an impact on her in her life. And this was such an interesting way to structure a novel. And I found that really interesting. And this was a little bit not as light as some of the other Furrowed Middlebrows. It definitely has a little bit of maybe melancholy to it, but I really enjoyed this, and I am definitely looking forward to reading more Marjorie Sharp. I did read Clooney Brown in February and absolutely loved it, so Marjorie Sharp is definitely an author I want to read more from. Next up is another novel featuring spinsters, and that is Miss Plum and Miss Penny by Dorothy Evelyn Smith. And in this, we follow our 2 title characters. Miss Penny is lovable. She lives in a small village, and then a chance encounter with Miss Plum leads her to give Miss Plum shelter at her home. And Miss Plum is a lot. That's all I'm gonna say. And we just find out what happens to these 2 women in their relationship with one another and how that changes them both. And, well, it changes Miss Penny. I'm not sure if it changes Miss Plum, but I really like this. If you're looking for something to read for Spinster September, I highly recommend this one. Next up is a book that was probably my biggest disappointment of the Furrowed Middlebrow books that I have read so far, and that was Pirouette by Susan Scarlett. We read this last year for the Cozy Reader Book Club, and unanimously it was panned, unfortunately. Oh goodness, the characters in this were just so unlikable. The mother in this, so we follow a young woman who is a ballerina, clearly, and her mother is just about the worst stage mother you could possibly imagine. And it is just, it's so hard to read about. If you love ballet shoes, this is not ballet shoes. Susan Scarlett is the pen name of Noel Strickfeld. And yeah, this was so disappointing. I had such high hopes for this, and yes, I did not like this very much at all. There's a younger brother in the family of the ballerina. He's about the only character I sympathized with. This poor kid really got the short end of the stick, but yeah, this wasn't a favorite. And next up is a standalone D.E. Stevenson novel, which is Charlotte Fairley. And Charlotte is a headmistress at a girls' boarding school, and we follow her through sort of the trials and tribulations of her job. We get to meet the teachers and other administrators that she works with, as well as the headmaster of the local boys' boarding school. And then a young woman comes to the school who's very homesick for the Scottish Isle she is from, called Targ, and this sets into motion a chain of events which eventually sends Charlotte to the Isle of Targ as well. And we follow her. There's maybe a little bit of romance, and I just found this utterly charming and delightful. I absolutely loved it, and I'll definitely be rereading it again at some point in the not too distant future, I believe. And then the final three of the Furrowed Middlebrow books that I own and have read so far are three D.E. Stevensons from the same series. The first is Victoria Cottage, the second book is Music in the Hills, and the third is Winter and Rough Weather. I adored this trilogy. It is utterly fantastic and charming. Victoria Cottage is definitely my favorite. Carolyn Daring, who is our main character in this, I want to be friends with her. I want to live next door to her. I want to go over to her cottage for tea and a chat. And yes, I was just completely enamored of her from the very first page. Music in the Hills is probably my least favorite of the three, but that's not saying that there is anything wrong with this book. It is still wonderful. It's just that if I had to put them in order of how I liked them, that Music in the Hills comes third and Winter and Rough Weather would definitely be in second place. It just wraps up the story so nicely. And yes, this is just a trilogy that if you're a D.E. Stevenson fan, do not skip this one. It's fantastic. Next up is the Furrowed Middlebrow book that I am currently reading, and that is Anna and Her Daughters by D.E. Stevenson. And this is our pick this month for the Cozy Reader Book Club. There's still plenty of time to join us. If you'd like to read along with us and join us for our discussion, you can email me at the address in the description box and I can get you added to our mailing list. We would love to have you. And I just started Anna and Her Daughters over the weekend, and I am loving it so far. In this one, we follow Anna, obviously, and her three daughters. There's Helen is the oldest, Rosalie is the middle daughter, and Jane is the youngest, and we are being told the story from Jane's perspective. Now, their father has passed away fairly recently, and they find out that they don't have any money, basically. And they've been living a pretty luxurious life in London, and that has to come to an end. And Anna decides that she is going to go back to Scotland to the town that she is from, which is called Riddleton. And she has a cousin of hers find a cottage for her and the girls. And at first the two older girls don't want to go, but then they all end up leaving together and moving to Riddleton, and we're just following along as we see what happens to them there through Jane's eyes. And oh, it's just everything I love about D.E. Stevenson, and it's so domestic and charming, and I love the characters, and I'm very curious to see where the story is going to take us. But yes, I have high hopes for this one. Next up are going to be all of the books that I have yet to read that I currently own in the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint. Again, I'm going to go through these in alphabetical order by author, and I'm not going to give too much detail, I don't think, about each book. I may just give you a brief synopsis, but otherwise we'll be here all day because there are quite a few. First up is Village Story by Celia Buckmaster, and I believe this follows two discontented wives as well as the stories about their neighbors in this village, and I think we're just going to follow along with their lives, and that's pretty much all I know about this one. Yes, so sounds like it might be very lovely. Next up is another Molly Clavering book, and that is Love Comes Home. In this, we are following a young woman, Jane, and she is living it up in England, and she's recently gotten engaged, and then she is summoned home to Scotland to meet up with her sister who's returning home from being abroad. From going, I think, to finishing school in Paris. And so she returns home, but she doesn't tell anything about her engagement. And then it sounds like there's maybe a local matchmaker who wants to, fix Jane up. And it sounds like misunderstandings and gossip and all kinds of things happen. So it sounds like this will be another book by Molly Clavering, whom I already love. Next up is The Marble Staircase by Elizabeth Fair. Apparently, this was a long-lost novel of Elizabeth Fair's that was never published, even though it was written in the 1950s, and it wasn't until her heirs discovered it in 2021 that Dean Street Press published it for the very first time. And yes, I think we follow a woman who's got a grown daughter and then also a mother who I think kind of overwhelm her, browbeat her a little bit, and then it turns out she's getting an inheritance from some woman she used to know, and yes, then I guess we're just gonna find out what happens to her. So that sounds great. I am here for that. Next up is the one other nonfiction Furrowed Middlebrow book that I have in my collection, and that is A Chelsea Concerto by Frances Faviol. And this is her account of being in London during the Blitz, and I think this one might be darker and a little heavier than some of the other books in the Furrowed Middlebrow imprint series. But yes, it does say it's a powerful blend of humor, tenderness, and horror, including the most haunting ending of any wartime memoir. So I think I'm going to need to be in the right frame of mind for this one. But I think when I am, I've heard wonderful, wonderful things about this. So excited to get to it when I'm ready for it. Next up is a book I'm really hoping to get to this summer, and that is The Swiss Summer by Stella Gibbons. And this one takes place, of course, in Switzerland. We follow Lucy Cottrell, and she has been given a surprise invitation to spend the summer at a Swiss chalet. And I think that we're just going to follow what happens to her and all of the people she meets while she's on holiday. And this sounds just wonderful and charming, and maybe a little more on the lines of Cold Comfort Farm, just with kind of an eccentric cast of characters. And I am here for that. So looking forward to this one sometime this summer. Next up is a book that sounds very, very unique and was recommended to me by my friend Melissa, and that is Miss Carter and the Ifrit. This is by Susan Alice Kirby, and an Ifrit is like a genie, some sort of genie golem type of character. And yes, so we follow this woman, Georgina Carter. She's single in her late 40s and has a drab job in the censorship office. And then when she burns some wood in her fireplace, it releases a long imprisoned Ifrit, and we follow what happens. So a little bit of maybe fantasy, magical realism in this one. And yeah, I'm really excited about this. It sounds very intriguing, and I trust Melissa's judgment. She knows what I like, and so I'm excited to get to this one. This next one got me for the title alone, and that is Much Dithering by Dorothy Lambert. And in this, we are following Jocelyn Renshaw, who is a young widow, a specimen of human cabbage who fitted into her surroundings so completely that she was hardly noticeable. And then it sounds like her mother comes back into her life, and an aunt and some other people, and it sounds like suddenly things are going to start to become a little more exciting for her. And yes, this just sounds fantastic. I'm very, very excited to get to this one. Next up is probably the longest book that I have in my collection from Furrowed Middlebrow, and that is A Game of Snakes and Ladders. This is by Doris Langley Moore, and I was intrigued by this one for a couple of reasons. First, it has an element of theater to it. It is set in the theater, or at least part of it is, and then it is also set in Egypt, and I really love books that contain both of those elements. So to have them in one novel sounded just perfect for me. So this may be another one I grab over the summer because I don't know why, but Egypt, reading about Egypt, I just feel like I'm going to do that in the summertime. So probably because it's hot there. This is about Lucy and Daisy, and they're performing for a theater company in Egypt after World War I. The show closes and Daisy is going to stay on, but Lucy plans to leave. But then Lucy falls ill and she becomes indebted to Daisy's lover. Yes, Daisy's lover. And so she has to stay in Egypt to repay him, I guess. And then it ends up following them over the course of nearly 20 years, and we just see what happens. So I'm definitely intrigued by this. I forget who I heard review this one, but it sounds fantastic. So I'm really excited. Again, I think I'm going to try to read this summer. Okay, a few more to get through. Next, I have two by an author I just said earlier I want to read more of, and that is Marjorie Sharp. And the first one I have is The Stone of Chastity, and then I also have Rhododendron Pie. And The Stone of Chastity sounds like there's a professor, and he has come to the idyllic village of Gillingham in pursuit of the Stone of Chastity, a stepping stone in the local stream reputed to trip up impure women. His interest is cold-bloodedly scientific. Yes, so and then it sounds like, you know, the people of the village play some role in what's going to happen in this. So that sounds interesting and unique. And then Rhododendron Pie. So this one sounds like we follow the youngest of three children, Anne Laventy, and she doesn't really fit in with the rest of her family, who are very intellectual and elegant, and she's maybe a little bit plain and simple. And so we're going to follow what happens to her, especially after she gets engaged to somebody who's just very ordinary. And I guess we will find out what happens. So very excited for both of these and more Marjorie Sharp. Next up, I have the three books that Dean Street Press has reprinted from the Mrs. Tim series, and that is Mrs. Tim Carries On, Mrs. Tim Gets a Job, and Mrs. Tim Flies Home. I have actually read the first Mrs. Tim of the Regiment book, which was not published by Dean Street Press. I believe there is some sort of copyright publication right issue going on there, but I listened to the audiobook of it, absolutely loved it, and so I want to continue on with the series. And this is all written in diary format, so if you love things like The Diary of a Provincial Lady, Mrs. Tim will fit right in with that book. It's really wonderful, and I'm excited to get to the rest of these. And then I have one more D.E. Stevenson book on my TBR shelf, and that is Smoldering Fire. And in this one, we are back in D.E. Stevenson's beloved Scotland. And there is a owner of an estate who has let his home out to a wealthy Londoner. And he stays in the cottage by the loch. And then he is drawn to a woman who is invited to stay at his home, which he's renting out to this other Londoner. And I think we're going to find out what happens, maybe a little bit of romance there. So yes, I love D.E. Stevenson, so excited to read this one, of course. And then we're down to the final book still on my shelves to be read, and that is Miss Mole by E.H. Young. And I have heard wonderful things about this book. So we follow Hannah Mole, and she's a 40-ish spinster, and she is a governess and companion, and maybe she doesn't always quite tell the truth and has a tendency to speak her mind, maybe when she shouldn't. And then she ends up taking a job in her hometown with the widowed Reverend Corder and his daughters. And it sounds like she is uniquely qualified to be in this situation. And so we're just going to follow along with her. But love a spinster novel, of course, and very excited to get to this one. And that wraps up a tour of my Furrowed Middlebrow books that I have in my collection. I would love to chat with you in the comments. Have you read any of these titles? What are some of your favorites of the ones that I shared here today, especially the ones still on my TBR? I would love to know if you have any favorites from those, any titles that I should specifically pull out and prioritize. I'm always looking for recommendations for which of those you loved. And if you've read other Furrowed Middlebrow books that I don't have in my collection, let me know what I should get next. Because like I said, I am trying to collect all of the Furrowed Middlebrow books. That would be my ultimate goal someday, to have them all on my shelf and have them all read so that I can reread them all to my heart's content. But yes, I adore these books. In general, they are just so wonderful. And of course, there's always going to be one or two that don't quite work for me, but overall, I can just count on these books to be cozy and comforting and domestic and lovely and full of characters I can root for. And those are just things that I love in books. So let us chat all things Furrowed Middlebrow down in the comments. And if you don't have anything that you'd like to add to the comments, but you would like to let me know that you were here, because comments really do help my channel, because it's April, and April is known for its maybe up and down weather, leave me a weather emoji, either rain, an umbrella, sunshine, clouds, whatever it is, whatever the weather is where you are, let me know. I'd love to see that down in the comments. I really do like knowing that you were here and that you made it this far in the video. And if you did enjoy this video, if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, I would love to have you join my bookish community. And as always, I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye.